So, of course, a lot of you know Mariana is a person who doesn't need much introduction, um, but of course, we will give her the proper way of explaining. So, for those who don't know, Mariana is an architect and urban designer from Portugal, recently working as a senior architecture designer at Zaha did Architects. She is teaching at the Architecture Association in London and doing live workshops and webinars with students from all over the world. She graduated from the School of Architecture in Lisbon at the Politecnico di Milano. She moved to London to explore design and technology through the postgraduate course, Design Research Laboratory, DRL, at the Architecture Association School, the AA. Her research interest gravitates around the parametric design, generative design, digital design, and the evolution of architecture through the use of technology means, such as robotic fabrication. Her final project proposes a cluster of towers, radically different but biologically similar, in the center of London. Mariana joined Zaha did Architects after graduating from the AA school in 2017. She is part of the competition cluster ever since, responsible for the high-end design projects of the office. She was a part of the design team of winning projects such as the Navi Mumbai Airport, Western Sydney Airport, Exhibit Center Beijing, and most recently the Tower C in Shenzhen. So it is with great honor and a lot of admiration that I welcome Mariana to the stage.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mateus. Thank you everyone for coming. Hi, Sid. I see a lot of people that I know. It's really a pleasure to have you all here. Mateus, should you put up the presentation so I can start?
Yes.
Thank you.
No.
Happy Friday, everyone, first of all. It's Friday, amazing feeling. Clapping for Friday, definitely. Okay, so I'm gonna get started. Some of you know this, but I'm gonna recap a couple of things that I think are important to share, especially with students. And this time my presentation is gonna be a little bit different because I'm gonna focus my talk on what can be a shift from real life architecture to...
Pero es en el...
Hi.
Becky, please mute
what could be
your mic.
the shift? What could be the shift between real life architecture and what is happening right now, and maybe will happen to my life as well? That is a shift to virtual architecture. So let's see about that. So I'm going to get started a little bit about how I got introduced to virtual digital design. This is something that is quite new because in universities we don't talk about this. There's a chance that is coming bigger and bigger for us not to be just architects, but also to be digital designers. And this is something that no one tells you in the beginning. It's just a drive that you have. It's probably something that is in your nature. I think when I was a student, it was in my nature to look for form. It was in my nature to look for design. I was not at the right place. Probably architecture was still very stiff and the principles were also very different. And for some reason, no one really talks about design in architecture, which is, for some of us, it's a pity because we are designers at core. So when I finished, I didn't know I was a designer, but I knew that there was something that was not fulfilled. And I was in Portugal. Basically, what I have in Portugal is this scene that you see above. So it's modernist architecture, it's cubes, and it's everything that is very apart from who I am. So I had to move countries to look for what I felt that was correct for me, which now I know it's design in architecture. And when I moved to the UK, I basically looked for another school. It's something that I recommend a lot of people to do. Moved schools. I looked for a studio that was called DRL, so Design Research Laboratory in London. And this is basically where I got the first ideas of what digital design is. Okay, so basically I learned doing modeling digital design in London, and most importantly, I learned about the history of digital design. Okay, so everything that we know about CAD, which means computer aided design, generative aid design, algorithm aid design, is everything that started from the 80s and is in hyper development right now. And if you think about your schools, history stops at Le Corbusier. So it's the 50s and the 60s. So after that, we kind of stop hearing about architecture. But what happens after that is actually CAD. And it's not the boring CAD that we know, it's computer aided design. And on the DRL, I was exposed to this for the first time. I realized what computer aided design was, and I also realized where design could go. And for the first time, I was being a designer, and I was being a digital designer as well. So this was some of the times I spent on DRL. It was my final master thesis. It was about exoskeletons. I had a lot of topology optimization done in Grasshopper, in Rhino, and loads of Maya. Okay, everything you're looking at is Maya, done in like last seconds and minutes. So this was something that I modeled like pretty quickly in the end. But it was tough times. Okay, it was hard times at DRL, especially because I had this first slap in the face of what digital design was. So I was admitted at Zaha Hadid Architects, and Zaha was probably the office that is closer to digital design and design in architecture. Not all architecture firms do design or are even bothered to do design. It's not their goal. At Zaha, design is something, okay, it means something, and they have a lot of theory on design. So I joined Zaha right after DRL. I was very lucky for that. So when I joined Zaha, I joined a very specific cluster. I joined the competition cluster, and it's a cluster that does loads of digital design, and most importantly, it does a lot of research in design. So that's what I did the most of the time, and that was a very specific software, which is a software that we all know. Some of you who are my students, it's Maya, so it's the software that I do every day. And because I did not have an amazing background on the software, I realized the capacities of it, and especially for design. So I kind of pushed for it a lot, and I learned everything I could about Maya. These were all of my experience outside of the office, because there was something there that was not just for the real life architecture, there was something there for digital architecture as well. So I started doing my own studies after work and during the weekends. So as we all know, at some point I stopped, I started teaching Maya. I realized that I was actually not bad. I was good at it, and I realized the potential of the software for digital design, and I pushed for DRL to accept me as a teacher. So I was a teacher at the DRL for 4 years, and simultaneously I was working at Zaha, and for that reason, for the first time, I was actually splitting my time during the last 5 years. So I was splitting my time between teaching, and I was splitting my time between working, and that was something that was actually very important, and it's something that it kind of launched me in a way. I'm not just an architect for an office, I'm also a designer experimentalist, and that was something that created everything that you know from me at this point. So basically my life became that for the last 3 years or 4 years. I work during normal hours, I close my office and I log out, and I start my own designs, and everything very digital, and everything about pushing boundaries on design. It started at something very conceptual with Futurely, for example, or very conceptual for Live Academy. And then with time, conceptual digital design become something a bit more architectural. So from the tower, I would jump into the concert hall, and it is a bit more architectural than the first concepts. And that was a very interesting progress that kind of happened very naturally. So it also took me more time. So I was developing projects for office and other projects for myself until I landed on one of the biggest projects I've done so far. I mean, the most complete projects I've done outside of office, of course, which was the masterclass tower. And then with time, it became more and more architectural. And this is what I do. Okay, so I work for Zaha for the last 5 years. I've been working on Tower C for the last year and a half. It's the project that I won with Zaha 2 years ago, and then I stayed on the project till detailed design, and then I also do my own stuff, and I do my own work, which is the image on the right. I do my own digital design projects. So then something happened last year that we all know. Okay, there's another reality for these models that we have that are not going to be built. It's a reality, it's a virtual reality, it's metaverse actually happen, or is starting to happen. And for example, the projects we're looking at is Liberland by Zaha, and if offices are also getting involved on this metaverse and this reality, and we kind of need to look at it as a possibility that we all have. Okay, we all can join the metaverse design. But for me, what it meant is all of the models that I have been doing in the last years, they actually have a purpose, and they actually can land somewhere. And that was kind of a hope that happened with this idea of opening a world that is digital. So all of my little digital babies actually could be lived by someone, and that gave me another purpose. And that will make me also think about something that is important, which is this is how the metaverse is looking right now. Okay, so we are kind of replicating our real life mistakes, I would say, on the digital life that actually has no boundaries. And we still feel very attached to these little archetypes like windows and doors and gravity and 90 degrees. And in reality, the question is, why would we keep doing that if we can actually achieve this? And that's something that I'm kind of hoping that in the future I can break that and make the digital world more interesting even than the real world. Because if you don't have any boundaries, or if you don't have the same boundaries as the real world, why would we keep doing the real world in the digital one? So that's kind of what I want you to think today, is to kind of break the design boundaries on the metaverse and to think that we are all allowed to do this kind of architecture. Okay, we don't need big offices to be involved right now. If there's something that we can do, is the digital design side of what could be a new reality. So I really encourage all of you to give it a try. Okay, this is my current project, and hopefully it will be also part of the digital world. It's something that will inevitably happen to me, and I think it's something that will inevitably happen to all studios and all offices. They will be split between the projects that are real and the projects that are virtual, and so the sooner you start, I think the better. And yeah, that's for today's talk. So let's have a look at the 3D. Mateus, if you can we have a little 3D ready. I think some of my students actually thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Mateus, can you bring on the 3D? Okay. So this is one of my 3D models. So it's the tower. I think some of you know it. Some of you actually practice this 3D. And right now it's kind of flying. Let me see if I can center this. I think you can come closer as well. So this was some of the 3D that Mateus was kind enough to kind of rationalize and have it. Yeah, you can really go through it. Go through it. It's okay. Just pass through it. This is one of my projects that was 3D done for a class. Okay, so I taught this 3D, and then it also had interiors, but it was a bit too heavy to include the interiors. But it basically keeps the same principles of everything that I teach on my classes, which is fluidity and the idea of bringing fluidity to metaverse and to virtual realities. There's no reason for us to be doing the same degrees that we unfortunately keep doing in real life. So I really encourage everyone to kind of bring this new language. Oh, I am kind of immersing people on this. Let me see if we can like. Yeah, this is really cool, Mateus. Thank you for the really fun.
Seeing your projects for such a long time, and it's great to see. It feels like in person, right? It feels like I'm personally in a VR headset right now, and I can actually walk through it and look at it, and it's a great visualization tool, but also it showcases the care of geometry and there's no words to explain, right? The actual shape and form and attention to detail. It's something that you guys, you Mariana, and your fellow coworkers Zaha are very in tune with, and it's a pleasure seeing this level of work here with us today. And also regarding your entire presentation, I'm just gonna go ahead and speak a little bit as as a response to that, it's great seeing your story, and also the way how you go back to the community of academia to showcase and teach that, not only through the AA, but also in all of those workshops. That's actually how I got to know you, right? I took one of your
Exactly.
fluidity workshops on Futurely, and that was eye-opening. And it's not, of course, the same level as taking a whole studio in architecture, and anyone from architecture understands the level, and the depth of knowledge that you get in the whole semester of studio. But it's the
Hmm.
glimpse, right? It opens the door of curiosity, and it showcases the little bit of what we don't know, right? And I think that's
Yeah.
what fuels us marching forward. And I mean, people that have been with us at Sunken Blimp are tired of hearing about curiosity. We agree that curiosity is what marches forward. And I think what you do best is inspire people and bring this curiosity of, oh, maybe we can do things in a certain way, and or change the way we do things. And I think your story really shows that. And just want to thank you
Thank
again for
you.
being here with us today, Mariana.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine. I think what is really important is, for some reason, there's a group of designers or a group of architects of probably the people who are exactly in this room that were designers from the beginning, and we saw the design in architecture from the beginning, but we just didn't know that we were designers in architecture. So most of us who were in college and we went through these first years, we were very unhappy because we could not understand that we were aiming for something that was not there, and we were being taught stuff that was not exactly what we wanted to be taught. You know what I mean? So for some reason, design was not on our university, and I'm pretty sure that in the next years it will be a requirement. It will be as important being a good designer as being a good architect. And I really hope that this digital future and this digital architecture doesn't split architects and designers, because it will be a lot more interesting to be a digital designer and being part of the virtual world than the real one, since the real one has so many obstacles and so many opponents. At some point you kind of think, okay, I'm just going to go to the virtual world and make it a very interesting space, and I don't want that to happen as well. So I really hope schools can embrace design, and schools can understand how important design is in architecture, so we don't split.
Yeah. I think one of the most interesting things about what
Thank
you
you.
just said, right, about splitting between designers and architects, I think what this is doing is actually indirectly making everyone more in tune about the art of shaping spaces, because now a lot more people have access to creating a space. For example, something like this, right? Let's say people that started working on this variation of the stage, for example, are not licensed architects, but now we are able to start creating spaces and questioning and experiencing, entering a space you created and then feel a certain way, and grow and learn how to make spaces without having the formal, all of the processes of being let's call it
Yeah.
real life, and that's me doing quotation marks, real life architect. But at the same time, I don't think it's necessarily a separator, but a way of creating empathy and really understanding what it's like to be in a space you create, or actually regret decisions of a space you created. So that way, I think moving forward, we're gonna see more interaction between, the, let's say, clients and architects, because now people are more in tune with spaces, and more, there's more accessibility of creating a space. That's my
Yeah.
personal opinion, and I think the intersection between physical and digital spaces are gonna grow more and more and more. But I think it's such an interesting topic that could be a dive live on its own, right?
Yeah, I agree completely. I mean, if you think about the extremes, we have been trying to push for another kind of architecture in real life, and it costs so much money. We start bringing all of these robot arms, and we build a bridge with the robotic arms, and we are so happy. But then we look at skyscrapers, and we're like, so how can a robotic arm really reach that? So we keep pushing it, and it's really expensive. So if there's another reality that is given to us that says, forget about the robotic arms, forget about extra costs, you can get this built in no time with no obstacles and no traditional opponents, why would you stay on the real one? You know what I mean?
Hmm. Yeah.
So I think
And
it's something that probably our generation won't get to see, but I'm pretty sure we will have this split. If the virtual world will really go somewhere and this becomes like an actual reality, acceptable reality, we will see this split.
absolutely. But what happens when the robotic arm now has the architectural license? And then
It's still too
designed for the
tiny.
digital world.
Robotic arms are like little ants.
Yes, it's not yet. That's not, we're not talking
It's
about
not yet. It's
yeah.
not there yet. Yeah, it's not there yet. Although I
No,
love
no.
it, like I love it. You know what I really like about robotic fabrication is the way they treat geometry. They had to prepare geometry for robotic fabrication, and the way they prepare geometry is really pure. It's really an advance on geometry, and it really help on researching geometry just for robotic fabrication purpose. But then it comes the cost. It comes proposing your client the cost, and it also like you have all of these traditionalists questioning. So in a way, I'm really intrigued to see where this is going.
Yes, it's definitely exciting, and I think a lot of people that are here today, share that. They share the excitement about this future, and of course there is uncertainty, but at the same time there's so much opportunity and potential, and I think that's what in overall unifies all of us, and that's what fuels this curiosity in the end.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, does anyone have any questions for Mariana based on her presentation or anything?
I do have a question. Hi. I'm not an architect myself, not a designer, but I am very curious on what this digital design and digital, let's call it digital architecture, it's kind of bringing,
Okay.
and how the space is shaping. And I was very happy when you showed the way different metaverses are kind of shaping themselves, like kind of
Yeah.
they are kind of lookalikes of our own neighborhoods and our own
Yeah.
architecture in general. And I am intrigued to know what do you think would be the aspects that would change the most, or where are the places where we can see the greatest innovation in designing spaces, digital spaces, for this case, for the metaverse.
I think it's a great question, and it's something that I'm also thinking about every day. Also because this will be probably this will be part of my life like heavily, so I kind of have to think about that. And I like to kind of wonder why people need this very direct reference from the real life to the digital life. So when you look at Decentraland or Sandbox, I mean, Sandbox has the pixel, so I'm not even going to consider Sandbox. I'm going to think about Decentraland. Why would humans need so much this direct version of the real life to the virtual one? And in a way, I also see the other one, which is the very extreme, which has zero references to the real life and the real life scenario. And I believe that the future will be somehow in between, because we don't want zero references. Okay, as humans, we will not recognize space if we have zero references from our archetypes. So I would still need to see to have a floor. I will probably need a ceiling, or as designers we are a bit more extreme, so let's say our parents, our grandmothers, they will need a ceiling and they will need a floor. So humans will need a reference from the reality. I also don't think it will be as direct as the cities that we have right now. So it will be an in-between. We need a reference from reality. We still need to see design that breaks the boundaries that reality has. So breaking the boundaries of gravity, breaking the boundaries of spaces that are linked to spaces. So for example, if you think that from your bedroom to your kitchen, you need a corridor. So these links will probably be what you're going to think more in metaverse. You don't need links anymore. You can just jump virtually from space to space. So places and archetypes that are links, like roads, hallways, corridors, or these links will not make much sense, because you just need to jump from one space to the other one. So most likely archetypes, the traditional ones, linking spaces, will be the ones that will probably disappear or will be rethought. I also think that the ground and gravity will be rethought. So spaces will be flying or not flying, you know what I mean? But they will be probably above. Some of them will be under. So we will have a vertical hierarchy as well, more than horizontal. There's no need to be horizontal like we are on Earth right now. You can be kind of strategizing your spaces vertically. So I think these kind of things will be rethought for the virtual reality. So verticality probably and link spaces will be something different for what metaverse is.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Yes, it's an interesting topic of like our need to bring it back to reality, right? Sometimes over and over again. Even I was at a gallery the other day, and it had columns. It was a virtual gallery, and it had columns. And then you think, why, why did someone choose to put columns?
Exactly.
There, you know?
Exactly.
And in a way, you know, I try to think why, you know, really pose the question. And they were trying to simulate the way people would circulate around the space, you know, looking at the artwork on the wall. So then they use that as a space organizer. But, you know, if you think about it, we don't need that, you know, we don't need something that looks like a column. We can start manipulating the way people move through spaces, or, you know, thresholds and things like that with other tools, other elements. And then the question about linking spaces, right? If you think about joining, jumping or linking the way you mentioned, like joining a portal, right? Right now we could go to a beach, right? I would drop a portal to the beach and we all go to the beach. That's what we do right now, for example, on websites, right? You're on YouTube and then you think, oh, how long do ducks live for? And you can quickly jump on Google and automatically you're in this search platform that you can quickly do something else. So I think that's something that is going to help as we need to go to another space or follow someone, which is already happening. You can quickly do this here. You can do that in VR chat, for example. But at the same time, even having a conversation with a couple of neurologists and this research between neuroscience and design and architecture, one of the things that comes to play is our interpretation of space and the way we remember spaces by procedures, right? And there's over and over again studies in architecture, in urbanism and studies of the city having a landmark. You know, you can orient yourself around the city by having a landmark because now you know your reference to a certain place. So sometimes having this quote unquote corridor in a virtual space also poses a question of importance, depending on what you're trying to do. You know, let's say you're designing a whole city in a virtual space. Now you want people to situate themselves and have the feeling of belonging to a specific location of that. So I think there's so many possibilities with this. It doesn't mean we have to have columns, right? But we can use these elements we've been using for centuries of creating quality spaces in a different scenario.
It's kind of a nostalgia, right? So these elements that will stay forever, they work as a nostalgia of spaces in the same way that we are doing the Roman columns. We don't need to do it, but it somehow brings a nostalgia of that time. Although I hate it, to be honest, I hate any nostalgia in architecture, but people will still want to see that. I imagine you're so happy. So people will still want to see it, you know, and in the future they will want to see these archetypes being represented. I'm pretty sure. But it will be an in-between. I'm very interested in bringing architecture, the way that I do architecture, so it's not really like a game architecture, is the real-life architecture into metaverse. I'm really interested to see that.
Awesome. So I have one final question for you to close this up, and I would ask you, in your opinion, someone that is interested, you know, is in this path of, you know, pursuing a career in architecture or is interested in design whatsoever, and also has this interest in the virtual spaces, would you have any recommendation, any tips for someone that is entering this world of what if I'm part of building virtual worlds or virtual spaces, or, you know, digital design, you know, modeling? What would be your orientation or tip for someone like that?
Well, I think that I would suggest people to kind of see it not as game design, okay? We try not to fall on the trap of being a game designer. We are still architects, so we see spaces differently. So when you're designing for digital world, think that you're still doing architecture. So just place your architecture in another reality. Don't fall for the game design. I think you will understand what I'm saying when you start seeing the different kind of designers that will bring their architecture into space. Okay, so stay as architects. We are architects, and bring your designers and your point of view as architects. So continue doing design with concepts. Thank you.
For sure. Well, thank you so much, Mariana. This was honestly a treat. Such an
Thank
honor
you.
to have you on stage
It
with
was a
us.
pleasure.